Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Model Car Cup Series. Wanted to share with you an update and do some work on our 1970 Roadrunner for the Unified Scale Automotive Content Creators group build. Stick around, let's get going. Today's trivia question. In 1960, Richard Petty won $35,000 in what car? A. Plymouth, B. Pontiac, C. Oldsmobile. We'll start with the body. First thing you may remember from the last video, we removed the vent window, opened up the wheel wells to match the pictures we have, as you see here, of Petty's 70 short track car. We also put the plates for the rear window, did our spoiler for the deck lid, and we've modified the grille to inset just a little bit so we have a good flush fit across the front. And of course that lets the hood sit nice and level. So I think we got a good start on the body there. This is just the first coat of primer. We've done our rough sanding a little bit. I'll do some finish sanding. I'm going to put one more light coat, and then we'll wet sand that with 2000, I think. And I think this is coming along pretty good. I went ahead and stripped the bumpers, and we'll be making the plates, as you remember, that'll go over these lights and the cover for the rear license plate area. And I'll be rechroming these, and we're going to video that whole process too. And the wheels are ready to be painted. I'm going to drill out the valve stem holes, and then we'll go ahead and get those painted, and we'll do that all. And as we move on, let me get this body out of the way here to the dash. As you can see in these pictures of the dash in the real race car, we're going to be modifying this dash to look like that as close as we can. And of course, again, this is not a super duper detailed build, but it will be one that's got the driver figure in it, and I'm starting to maybe change my mind about that. Moving on to the interior, I'm going to use the stock interior, but I'm going to modify it a lot. As you see on this one, I've already got the marks in it. A lot of this stuff is going to be removed, and then we'll take sheet plastic and build this up to look more like this, which is the 70 Superbird, as well as the short track Roadrunner, as you see how the configuration back there looks. So it'll closely represent that. Let's see, there was something else. No, I think that was it on the interior. Then moving to the suspension, you can see on this stock K member, I have some marks on there where we'll be cutting that, the center section out to better represent what you see right here, which is the underside of a 70 Plymouth from Petty Enterprises. And once we get this cut out, sanded away, we'll get it primed, and we'll take a look at that. And if you remember, we've already taken our wheel wells out, and that's something else we'll be doing today, is we'll be building up the wheel wells for the rear. And we may even look at the front suspension too. And you see that little bow that's still there. We'll be taking our heat gun and trying to straighten that out a little bit, because that bow right there just don't cut it. And you remember we made our fuel cell box to cover up the stock fuel tank there. And so we got a lot to do today. Next up, we're also going to take a look at the tires. These are 24th scale tires to match up, and we're going to be using the Replicas and Miniatures Company of Maryland's tire stencils, and I've shared these with you many videos back, but what we'll do is we'll just drop that right in. We'll put a piece of tape over the eagle, and then we'll just lightly airbrush. And I'm going to be using Tamiya, sorry, hitting the camera already, XF2, and we're going to break that down a little bit with some Tamiya acrylic primer, XF20A. And we'll get that airbrushed on, and we'll show you all of that. And we'll go ahead and get our wheels painted, all of that stuff as well. And by the way, if you can use decals to do this, it's no big deal. I like doing the stencil because that's the way they were on the real cars. And if you want these, Norm at Replics and Miniatures was telling me in Atlanta, I asked him if he still had these, and he said the guy that made them had passed away, so he no longer carries these. You can still find them on eBay every now and then. But there are other companies that make these stencils, as you see here. So they're still available from other companies. But back years ago from, I think I even wrote on this one. This one I got for the Top Fuel and Funny Car. There's 3 different ones in here, stencils. And yeah, I got these in Toledo in '09. And that's the 24th and 25th scale. But there's 3 different stencils in there. And then here's one for the 125th scale. And this one is for NASCAR and sprint car tires, and it's the Hoosier. So, and you can find these too, as well as I think BF Goodrich stencils. There's all kinds of other ones on eBay and online that you can find through different manufacturers too. So if you want to go through all the trouble to stencil them on there, there's stuff out there available, so it's no big deal. Okay, so first thing up, let's get these tires painted. We have our tires cleaned up, prepped for paint, and how I did that was I just put them in some Dawn and some warm water, cleaned them up real good, got any mold release that might still be on the rubber on there or the vinyl. Took a silk handkerchief that I've got and just kind of cleaned them up really good. And I'll hit them one more time before we paint. And as far as paint goes, what you want to use is an acrylic. Back in the 70s, when the MPC kits came out, a buddy of mine and I would paint the white lettering on those tires with Testor's flat white paint. Well, the problem is with an oil-based paint on this material, it almost never dries. Takes forever. So you want to use an acrylic, a water-based paint. It does dry. It dries quick, and it's on there. So we're going to be airbrushing this over a stencil, and so we want to make this about the consistency of milk. So I'm going to cut this 2 parts paint, and we're using the XF2 flat white Tamiya, and we're going to use the Tamiya X20 acrylic thinner, and I'm going to use 2 parts paint, 1 part thinner, and probably air pressure is going to be about 18-20 degrees somewhere, or degrees, pounds. And our stencil, as you see in this picture, it only had the Goodyear on it, didn't have the Eagle back then in 1970. So I've cut a piece of tape here. We're going to cover up the word Eagle, and there we go. And like I said, we're going to wipe that down one more time here, and I'll just show you real quick. We're going to go ahead and pop that right in, and we're going to do a light dusting with the airbrush right over this, because these were lightly stenciled. It wasn't something that was a showroom stock thing. It was for the race cars. And so we're going to do a light stencil right across that, not very heavy, and we'll see how it looks. Let me mix up the paint and we'll get going. Okay guys, we've got our paint, the consistency of milk, and we have our stencil. Let's see what we got here. Do both sides and we'll get the rest of them done. Stick around. All our wheels and tires are finished, as you can see. Well, the wheels are not exactly finished. I've got a little bit of work on them. I've got to do a wash yet down in these, kind of smut them up a little bit, and I'll probably do a little semi-gloss finish over that. But the tires, I think, with the stencils really turned out pretty well, as you can see there. And the hubs up front were the semi-gloss, and of course on the rear axle had the silver in the center of the hub. But I think these turned out really nicely. Where's my body? And as you can see, that's going to look pretty good sitting right there. And there's our picture, of course, again, with where that's going to be sitting. And of course the rear will be somewhere in probably about, I think, probably about that range. It'll be about the ride height for the car. But I think these turned out really, really well. Next up, we're going to take a look at what we're going to do with the chassis and interior. And I'll be showing you some pictures of the other suspension parts too. In fact, I think I'll get to those here in just a second, but we're going to remember to have to take this back seat out, and we're going to have to build up, make some changes there. These rear wheel wells have to be arched a little higher, and that means we're going to have to cut those all out, so we'll take a look at that here in a few minutes too. So let's get a look at some of the suspension components in paint. First up, let me go ahead and show you the engine. This is the Kit 440, but because the hood's going to be down, it's going to be in an in-track mode. I've decided to just go ahead and use this. I did paint it equipment blue, which is the dark blue that you see here that are on the Hemis of that era. And as you remember, the dash, here's a look at where we started, the stock dash, and the piece of sheet plastic we cut out. And then, of course, I used my punch to make the little indentation there for the steering wheel or steering column. And here is our finished product in primer. So as you can see, we've got that laid out. I'm going to use a photo etch script that says Plymouth over here, and then we'll put our gauges back up there, as you remember, right here. And now back over to that suspension that I was talking about. Remember, we took a stock K-member. We removed a big section of it there. I've already got it primed and painted, and you see the difference there. And this matches what's underneath the car, as you see here. And this is a 70, it's a 70 Superbird, but they were the same cars. The short nose, just the skin was the only difference. And went ahead and painted the rear end and drive shaft the same. The white drive shaft in NASCAR didn't come into play until the 80s, so this was accurate for the day. All right, well, let's get over and we'll walk you through the chassis. If you answered A, Plymouth, to the trivia question, congrats, you're right. We've already removed our rear wheel wells, and we're going to be enlarging those. So I took just a regular medicine bottle. You can use a compass, but I used the same medicine bottle I used to kind of wallow out those front wheel openings. And as you see here, I put that on a piece of sheet plastic. I drew the circle. Then I cut that circle out with a pair of scissors. This is 20 thousandths evergreen, by the way, just 20 thousandths thick plastic. And then I cut it down the middle, glued it in place, and you see here where I trimmed it out against the chassis or the frame rails. And then I took, once again, 20 thousandths sheet plastic, and I made the arches. Then I just looped that over the top of the arches and back down into the wheel wells, or to the chassis, excuse me. And you see here a front-on view. And then from the sides. This gave that extra depth that was needed, and you can see right here the difference in the enlarged and then the stock wheel well on the bottom, and then the enlarged on the top. That gives me a little more room to adjust my stance. And then moving on over to the chassis, you see here I went ahead and cut out that seat that you saw the black marks on from the early on. And this gives me now I can make my measurements. And of course I have another one that I'm going to sit beside it, as you see here. And that way I can measure where everything needs to go. I've removed the back seat altogether, and while that was in place, I went ahead and made my measurements on the sheet plastic, and as you can see here, this is how we're going to do it to achieve this look. You see the two hatches right there where the shock access panels are. And then here we've got our first piece from the bottom added. And again, this is all 20 thousandths evergreen sheet plastic. They're upright. The access panel, and on the top of this is where those two little bays will be for the shock access. And the package shelf, and you notice the package shelf is cut in half right behind the speaker grills is where that was cut off, so that's a shorter piece. And if you look at the real car, it's the same. And then here, of course, is that entire section finished. And you'll notice I've already cut out the access, or excuse me, where the wheel wells will go. And once again, just using that pill bottle did the exact same thing. And here's the circles put in there. And guys, this looks complex in some ways, but it's really not. And it's a lot of fun to do. Those little half rounds there that are the wheel wells from the inside of the car, I think I did about 3 or 4 of them, because the first 2 I kind of had to adjust and messed them up, but after that it was just easy to fix. It wasn't any big deal. And here's a front on view. And of course there'll be some putty and filling in and some stuff like that before we get it primed. And then the side panels, very easy. And this is 10 thousandths. The reason I went with 10 thousandths on these side panels here is because we're going to be using a modified stock door card. And you notice how that's going to be covering it. This is going to be kind of like aluminum here. And this is going to be in here just like this. And the reason we're going to do it this way, and you see how that fits right up flush with that, is, as you see in this picture right here, the side roll bars are enclosed in a piece of aluminum. So what we're going to do here is we've got a piece of sheet plastic cut to that size. We're going to be putting bare metal foil matte aluminum over this, and then we'll place this right here. And once again, you see again the side panel there, where that roll bar on the side, and then of course the roll bar will run up from, well, I don't want to necessarily have that straight, right up through here, and then right up through here and across, and the sidebars are behind this. So that's the way we're going to be doing that. And going back to this, so really that'll just be there, and I'm probably going to put some rivets with a pounce wheel across here too, where it's pop riveted in. There is just a couple more pieces back here that need to be changed. The kind of triangular, almost triangular section of the transmission, or excuse me, the drive shaft hump back here that we'll have to add. And then there's another little angled piece that goes right here, which we'll add. And that should wrap that up. Then next time we'll scratch build that roll cage, which will be pretty simple. In fact, I may use a kit, the back portion. I'm not sure yet, but we'll do that next. And I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up this time. Next time we're going to do the roll cage, seat, a little bit more in the interior. I want to go ahead and finish up my modifications to to the chassis, which will be minor. I'll try to have it in primer by the time we get back. We'll have the paint in, or excuse me, the body in probably finished primer, may even have the first color coat on it. We'll take a look at that and see. Next time we're going to go through the entire chrome process for the bumpers and the polished aluminum for the grill, and we'll get going from there. And by the time, in fact, probably before the deadline, January 15th, we should be done with all of this. But aren't those things cool, though? I'm really pleased with those wheels and tires. Looking good. I got to add the valve stems, a little wash, and then I'll dull them down a little bit, give them a little bit of a used look. And I've got something else in mind. Instead of putting it on the track with the driver figure, I got something else that popped up about this car that I saw in a picture, and I'll share that with you next time too. Guys, thanks so much for tagging along this time. If you're not a subscriber, head on over, give us a sub, show us some love there. If you want to help any channel out, you've heard me say this repeatedly, but it's true. Any of these other content creators you follow, you know, it helps the hobby grow, and it helps us, and it's great motivation for us to keep going too. Hit the notification bell. Don't want to miss out on any videos. And God bless you guys. I will see you in the next video. Thanks.